So we're going to talk about the basics of the bunker. So just remember that a bunker is a hazard and it's a penalty to go in there. So you cannot touch the sand or ground your club in the sand prior to hitting the ball. Okay, so that means when you're taking a practice swing, make sure you take it out there so you can actually ground your club. If you took a practice swing in here, it would actually have to be above the sand, and sometimes that's hard to do, and then repeat by hitting the sand. So make sure you take your practice swings out there so that you can ground the club and practice getting underneath the ball. Okay. The other thing you can't do is grounding it. You can't just touch the sand like this as you're getting in here. Okay, that would be a penalty as well. So just some basic knowledge. The other thing to remember in a bunker is that you're actually not hitting the golf ball. You're hitting the sand and then the golf ball, which is very different than most other golf shots where you're hitting the ball and then the ground. This one you're actually hitting the ground first and then the ball. So we're actually entering the sand about an inch or two behind the golf ball and then hitting the golf ball. So physically you're not actually touching the golf ball to the club face. The sand is what's moving the golf ball and getting it out of the bunker. So our goal here is to try to make it easy, or as easy as possible, to get out without actually making contact with a golf ball. So in other words, we're trying to toss the sand out of the bunker. It's a great visual. Instead of trying to hit the ball out, try to get the sand underneath the ball and get it out of the bunker. Now how do we do that? So what I'm going to do is we're going to start from the ground and work our way up. It's the easiest way to do it. So when you're setting up in a bunker, you want to make sure that you take a nice wide stance. Okay, you want to make sure that your front foot, me being right-handed, being my left foot, is a little flared or a little open, so it's a little bit back away from the target line. Okay, we want to take this wide stance to create a nice stable base. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to dig our feet in a little bit, okay, to create some stability, because sand is a very unstable surface. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our grip. Let me go backwards. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to play our ball position a little forward of center. We do not want to play it in the middle or back, and I'm going to explain why in a second. Okay, so once we have our ball position forward of center, so here would be the center of my stance. You can see if I have it forward of that. What we're going to do is we're going to take our grip and we're going to take our club face and we're going to open it ever so slightly. So if we look at the leading edge here, right, we want to make sure that we open the club face a little to the right this way. And the reason why we do that in the bunker is because we want to expose the bounce and use the bottom of the club rather than using the leading edge. In a bunker, if we use the leading edge, it's going to really dig. And the best visual I can give you behind the golf ball here is if I just take the handle and I drag it with the leading edge, you're going to see it really digs deep into the ground. Whereas once I open the club face a little, I turn this leading edge a little to the right, okay, and I do the same thing, you can see it skims the top of it, and that's what we want to try to do. So again, we're trying to use the bounce, not the leading edge. So when we do this, if we use the leading edge as a reference point, okay, and we imagine that 12 o'clock is up here and 6 o'clock is here on a clock, for us right-handed golfers, we're going to twist this just a little to the right to open it up a little bit to expose that bounce. Now this makes my 58-degree sand wedge or lob wedge more about 60 or 65 degrees when we open it. So we don't have to open it so much. We have plenty of loft. We just want to open a little bit. Okay. So once we get it open, then we're going to take our grip. I see way too many amateurs take their club, open it, and then put it behind the ball like this. So make sure you open it, then take your grip. Don't put your hands on there normal and then try to twist it open with them already on there. Take it and turn it a little bit, then put your hands on there. Okay? Now, going back to the ball position here, once you have this club face open, you'll notice we play the ball forward on our stance so that the shaft can stay pretty straight up and down so that the loft stays on the club and we use the bounce properly. If we have our hands too far ahead, what happens, it starts to expose the leading edge again, and then we're going to start digging. We'll have to swing a lot harder, and the ball probably won't get out of the bunker. Okay, so we have the ball position forward, we have the club face a little bit open, and really important that that club shaft is pretty straight up and down. If it leans a little forward or a little backward, that's okay. I'd rather see it, if anything, on this particular shot, straight up or a little bit backwards, because most amateurs tend to lean it too far forward. Okay, So once we have that setup figured with our stance a little wider, our feet dug into the sand, a little bit of an open stance, okay, and our club face slightly open with the shaft straight up and down, now we have to make sure, probably the most important thing of all, is to make sure that our grip pressure is very, very relaxed and loose. So on a scale of a 1 to 10, we want it to be a 5 or below. So somewhere maybe a 3, 4, or 5. Barely holding on to this thing. The most common error in the bunker is for someone to hold on to the club way too tightly. Okay? So once you get that grip pressure down, and if you have a hard time doing that, you should be able to waggle the club a little bit, and you can see I'm just moving my wrist and the club head is moving. If I'm holding it too tightly, everything's going to want to move like this. So make sure it's nice and relaxed. You can create a couple waggles, and then the goal here is to really get the club elevated, or hinging the club up in the air on the backswing. We never really want to take this thing low and around us here. We want to make sure this thing hinges up in the air and creates this little angle here we call the L swing here. So we're not really shifting our weight, we're keeping our pressure on our front foot, and we're hinging the club up. And you can see I've done a little bit of a turn with my shoulders, but more importantly, I'm getting the club up. I'm not lifting it up, I'm using my wrist to hinge it up in the air. Okay? Now that allows us to slam down into the sand and splash the ball out. If we took it too much around us, we're going to skim the sand too much, and we're probably going to hit a low line drive that might hit the lip of the bunker or go screaming across the green. So we want to make sure that we hinge this club up appropriately. Okay, so the sooner you hinge, not the faster, but the sooner you hinge in your backswing, the better. You get this thing elevated. And then all you're going to do from here is you're keeping your weight forward, keeping your grip pressure soft. You're going to swing through and follow through to a 3/4 finish. You can see I'm not going all the way through. We're just going through to a 3/4 finish. So a great rule to follow is as much backswing as you should take the equal or more amount in your follow through. So always make sure you follow through. Never cut your follow through short. So if you go back to about shoulder height, go through to about shoulder height. And one rule to remember is if you really struggle with your bunker shots, get really good at one swing. So let's just say you're swinging from shoulder height to shoulder height. Get really good at swinging from shoulder height to shoulder height and getting it out on the green every time. Then you can learn how to control the distance, which we'll go over in another video. But until then, don't worry about being so perfect with the distance. The number one rule here is just get it out and get it on the green. Okay? So again, as long as backswing you make, you should take that in a follow through. So my rule here is I try to go from shoulder, so hinge up to shoulder, swing through to shoulder. So again, I'm going to go over this one more time, then we're going to hit it here. So we get ourselves set up, dig our feet in, our stance is a little bit open, not severely open. Our club face is a little open, grip pressure is nice and soft, and you can see my club shaft is straight up and down. And you can see I'm shifting a little bit of pressure to my front side keep in there. That just helps me keep the bottom of the swing where I'm going to hit the sand in the same place and not moving around, okay? Then all we're going to do is we're going to make a nice relaxed swing, maybe make a few waggles to make sure we're staying nice and relaxed, and we're going to hinge the club up, and then all we're going to do is we're going to splash the sand in the bunker and try to get it onto the green, okay? And you can see I'm not swinging extra hard. I'm going to do an example here. Back, through. You can see I'm not swinging really hard. I'm just making a long swing to make sure it gets out. It doesn't have to be at 100 miles an hour or 100%. As long as the swing is upright and long enough, the ball will come out. Now, one last thing before we hit this thing. Sometimes it's easier to focus on a point where you're going to hit the sand rather than focus on the ball. And what I mean by that is a lot of amateurs are taught to keep your eye on the ball the entire time. Well, we don't want to do that in the bunker because we don't want to hit the ball. We want to hit the sand. So instead of looking at the top of the ball, what I would tell you is pick a spot. Now, you can't do this. You can't draw a line, but I'm going to do it here. Pick a spot right behind the ball, about 2 inches, and keep your eyes focused on that. Then get set up, and as you're hitting, just focus on that spot and trying to hit that spot. So get your setup, go through everything that we just talked about, make a few waggles, make sure you're staying nice and relaxed. Then we're going to hinge, and we're going to swing, and we're going to keep our eyes focused on that spot. Let's see if we can do it. And you can see I went all the way through to my shoulder on my left side here. I'm all the way through. My weight is still on my front leg. I've splashed the sand, and it got out of the bunker, and the ball went with the sand out of the bunker. So remember a couple keys here. Remember a couple things. Loose grip pressure, weight forward, splash the sand out of the green, onto the green. Okay? So again, loose grip pressure, weight forward, splash the sand onto the green.